Hey, I'm John Gibbons. Welcome to my studio. This is where I've worked from in Carlow in Ireland for the last number of years. It's my favourite place to go. Even if I'm not making music, I just like to sometimes sit here and drink in the atmosphere. It's nice and quiet, tucked away from the world, and it's the polar opposite of when I'm live at a gig. The honest answer is I don't know. I never remember a time when I wasn't surrounded by music. Like, I have very early memories being in the car with my mum and dad. They were listening to people like Queen, Fleetwood Mac, Elton John, Leonard Cohen. The radio was on if those artists weren't. And I was just surrounded by it. And from before I could talk, I was trying to sing before I could talk. Now, I never really learned to sing in the intervening years, but yeah, music was like, I was fascinated with radio, people playing music. I remember, like, I had to be, I don't know, playing Army in the garden when we were 6. I'd be pretending to be on the radio and presenting songs. Like, it goes that far back. So I suppose, like most humans, I love music, but I was always particularly drawn to it and surrounded by it. The technology fascinated me. I must have wrecked so many of my parents' headphones, radios, stereos back in the day. Like, they'd often talk about it. Like, I just wouldn't leave things alone. I always wanted to press the buttons, make them react, which leads on, I suppose, to DJing eventually. But I didn't get into DJing until I was in, I think, 4th year in school. I had done a lot of stuff on stage. I did a lot of drama in school. I sang in a couple of bands, flirted with playing various instruments, but not particularly well. And I was on a student representative council in school, and one of our tasks was to organise school discos a few times a year. And one of the lads in the school was the DJ always, but he was about the only DJ in the school. And he couldn't go short notice to one of the gigs. I had a big music collection. At the time it was CDs. And I said, well, look, how hard can it be? I know the music well. I'll just play it. And I did, and it went from there. I will never forget that gig. It was in the school, Friday evening, in front of the whole school. So it was my friends, you know, and people that I knew. And just the feeling of that energy. It wasn't like being in the band. It wasn't like acting. It was something else. And I think because it was just that high energy, it was dance music and like rave music at the time. There were no boundaries on what could be played at those school discos, so they were full on underage raves essentially. And I just remember thinking, oh my god, this is brilliant. So straight away I went about trying to get gigs, and I started doing, like, my second gig was in the rowing club. Again, small disco for people that I knew. Started doing 21sts, weddings, parties, then graduated onto bars, nightclubs. This would have all been kind of more commercial music, nightclubs. And started to promote gigs then when I went to college, and to promote dance gigs as a way to get dance gigs for myself, because I couldn't. So that became a whole business in itself, and I was booking DJs from all over the world to come to Ireland, and I was supporting the DJs. Nobody knew it was my brand. To this day, most people don't, the brand that I was resident for, but it was actually to promote my own career. I then got a show on Spin 103.8 in Dublin. That was before streaming and before podcasting, and radio was still, for dance music, a huge source of finding new music. And then the dance side of my career really took off. In terms of gigs, there are a couple. The biggest gig I ever did was a festival in Mexico, in San Luis in Mexico, called Technogeist. It wasn't a techno festival, but over there at the time all dance music was called techno. It was my first time doing a gig further than, say, Europe, and one stage, a crowd of like 60,000-70,000 in front of me. I had never seen, I'd played festivals, but this was a single stage setup, a week-long festival with a different style or genre of music each night. And I was booked, the headliner at the time was Corvin Dalek, who was huge in South America at the time. Ronsky Speed, the trance DJ, was on the lineup. DJ Klang, who would be a big Mexican DJ. And somehow my agent and manager at the time, who was also Corvin Dalek's manager, got me on that lineup. And I'll just never forget walking out on that stage, playing the music that I loved, my own productions. I wasn't producing that long as well, in front of a crowd who had never seen me before, and watching their reaction. And it reminded me of the school disco when I started DJing. It gave me that same buzz. And I thought, you know what, it gave me a lot of confidence that I can bring this sound and what I do anywhere. To bring it to Mexico, it just felt like I was DJing on the moon in the best possible way. And just the crowd was huge. I'll never forget it. There was a moment in that gig, it was mad. There was a riot right down the back. It was a big kind of they'd changed the town square into an amphitheater type thing, so they'd bucket seats way back down in a kind of a curve, and down at the very end, as I subsequently discovered, two rival drugs gangs started to riot down the back, and out of nowhere, I had not seen any police presence. Out of nowhere, these riot police just emerged. The riot was going on while I was playing right down the back. The gig just carried on, and whenever that ended and they all got dragged off, the space just got filled again. And like, I just think to now, that was to happen in Ireland. You'd probably have inquests, tribunals. You'd have, like, you know what I mean? There wouldn't be a gig allowed for 20 years, and whereas they just got on with it. They dealt with the problem and got on with it. Nothing stopped, and I'll just never forget that. I'll try and be as concise as I can, because I probably have loads, and take what you will from it. I'm not saying I'm correct about it all, but in my experience, a lot of them start with the word P. So persistence is one. We've spoken about showing up, being consistent. Be persistent. When you believe in what you're doing, be persistent. You can be politely persistent. There's another P, actually, polite. Politely persistent. But if you send out a demo, or if you're looking for a gig or whatever it might be, follow up on that in a polite way. And it leads on to the next thing, which is another P, professionalism. Professionalism is sorely lacking amongst up-and-comers at the moment. It is worth its weight in gold to learn how to properly construct an email in a polite, pertinent manner. Don't just send an email to somebody if you want them to play a track saying, "Hey lad, listen to me track." And I mean, that sounds flippant, but that will turn so many people off. Not necessarily me, or not necessarily the next person, but so many people, particularly industry people, off. They're getting so much stuff all the time. If you want to cut through the noise, be professional, because most of the noise isn't professional. Patience is another one. You gotta be patient, unless you're very lucky and things happen overnight and you go viral. That can happen, but for the vast majority of us, you have to be patient with what you're doing. You'll get a lot of knockbacks, you'll get a lot of rejection. Find a method or a way to live with that. Pick yourself up and keep going. All you need is one yes. You can take, I think it was Jay-Z who talks constantly about the constant rejections, the hundreds and hundreds of rejections. Once he got that one yes, then things took off. You know, that's echoed by so many artists out there and people in lots of different fields. The most important of all, though, is to love what you're doing. It's just, if you don't love what you're doing, don't do it. Find something that you do love. You don't have to do a particular style of music or a particular BPM or look a particular way when you're DJing because others say you should. If you don't feel that and you're not comfortable with it, find what you are comfortable with, because on some level that I don't fully understand, maybe it's a universal level, maybe it's a vibratory thing, your audience, be it through SoundCloud, be it through Spotify, be it in a live scenario, will either resonate or not, and people resonate with authenticity. Do what you do, what makes you happy, what you love doing, because you'll find it much easier. You won't have to second guess yourself, and you will achieve your goals if you're consistent about it, because the people that you need around you will come to you. Can't explain why or how, it just happens. They will come to you. Do what you love doing, and the rest will fall into place. I think anybody who works in music will tell you that. I mean, there are just degrees of challenges. So the first part for me was to take the risk to call DJing my career and my job. I had a very different career path mapped out. The plan was to become a barrister, and I went to college and finished college and all of that, but I decided to give music 2 years after college. On those 2 years, now I kind of knew deep down that music was what I wanted to do at that stage, but to actually take the leap and decide, right, this is what I'm doing, let's cast the rest aside, was a challenge. The legal path is one that potentially could have been quite secure and comfortable, shall we say, but I've never really been one to take the comfortable path anyway. So yeah, that was a challenging decision to make. Making the financial side of it work over the years has been quite challenging at various points as well, not least COVID, which we've discussed ad nauseum. But there are other times, you have peaks and troughs. There have been a number of musical transitions that I've mentioned throughout my career, and they will always coincide with a trough financially, because you're transitioning between an audience that knows you to one that doesn't necessarily. So you're not starting again, but you're shifting, and that can lead to less gigs. When I went from commercial DJing to deciding to break ties with that and just do dance music, that was a huge, like there was a period of a number of years there, it was almost like a mini COVID, where I was doing gigs but not well paid, and it was very hard to continue to earn a living from it, but managed to do that. And again, it's about adaptability. At that point I had a DJ agency that was providing commercial DJs for venues around the country, so that became the bread and butter that allowed me to continue to pursue the dream. When it comes to the business side of it, you have some huge personalities. You're quite often dealing with big egos as well within the business, and that can be very challenging to deal with. And there's a lot of rejection, of course. That's probably the biggest one of all. Whether the rejection is a song being turned down by a label, or getting some abuse online because somebody doesn't like your image or your glasses or your music or whatever it is you do, or they just don't like you, or criticism from close quarters. It could be a best friend, it could be a loved one, whatever it is. None of us are ever trained for any of that. And I think just in general terms in life, we're very poorly equipped, whether it's through our education system or whether it's through parenting or just our society in general, to deal with rejection. So we kind of have to navigate that path by ourselves. So suddenly if you're thrown into a world, especially now where everything's so visible and transparent online, where for all the praise you'll get, you could easily get double the negative attention, because for whatever reason people tend to gravitate towards negativity online as opposed to positivity. You have to go seeking out the positivity. Like, it's water off a duck's back at this stage. I just don't care. If somebody likes what I do, brilliant. They're the people I'm interested in. If somebody doesn't like what I do, it's not even that I don't care. I'm wrong about that. That's brilliant too. I don't care about the abuse side of it, which the less energy you give that just disappears anyway from your world. But I actually welcome criticism, or if somebody vehemently doesn't like what I do and starts talking about it, brilliant, because you are drawing attention to it, and the people who are suddenly having their attention drawn towards it, some of them will like it, they'll come over here to this group, and they're the ones that I'm pouring my attention into. So the worst thing for me in the world is apathy regarding what it is I do, because that doesn't fuel anything. Whereas the really good positive stuff or the really negative stuff, provided there's energy gone into it, that can be diverted. You can divert negative energy into something positive. And that's what I've learned to do over the years, is to channel some of the challenging negative energy into something positive for me. If you believe in what you're doing, keep doing it, because the universe will find a way, provided you believe and feel in what you're doing. Like it's like that holy trinity, the capstone at the top, is the feeling. So you can know what you want. So you've got this, you can take, you can start to believe in it, but until you take the action and start to feel it at the top, the Ben stone at the top of the pyramid, that's what manifests. And suddenly you've got that. That's why we see that ubiquitous triangle all over the place in imagery. That's what it's all about. Marry the three of those, but it has to come from you. It has to stem from your own belief, because no one else will believe if you don't. And even if somebody else does believe and you're not believing in your own work, you won't push it, because your belief isn't there. So believe it, feel it, and take the action, and it all becomes the one thing.
You should let me love you. Let me be the one to give you everything you want and need. baby, good love and protection.